Good evening, family, friends, and comrades. We are just about to commence the night of tribute in honor of our departed comrade, father, friend, and brother, Dr. David Pessey. And I'd like to invite to the microphone Oswald Okante to give us a dirge. Oswald Okante.
Oh, one ya, few, bunyaje, jake, one ya, hey, ofe, wabaya, anyamime. Ao wonya wonya few bonya je jake wonya ofe oya few ahuko etwa ansa duntika ko wewo yatatoa mi lele bele eba chawojo. The day is still young, not dead. Yet atop our heads, thick dark clouds. Oh yes, the night is here at noon. Alas, in our camp abound never-ceasing tears and dirges for warriors. Comrades, we are at a crossroad where mortals separate paths with immortals. In awe, in despair, soaked with never-ceasing tears, again to see off down the aisle filled with a loud silence, a warrior king. Onward, down into the ancestral groove where rest in power revolutionaries. I go. For him who lived, strived, and chose to war political highness with his intellectual sphere to allay the marginalized sphere. For him who you, me, and all sanitized in conscience and thoughts have gathered in sorrows and heal. For him that rolled as kings on the wood for kings. For him let the trumpets of same blow. For him let along the aisle to hear beyond the singers of praise song. For him let the silent tunes of the attentive band lead slowly into the graveyard of villains. I go. Birthed, lived, died, and yet to be remembered today, tomorrow, forever, in our hearts, in our thoughts, in our souls. Comrade Pessey, Dr. Pessey, Adieu.
Dear friends, dear friends, we have been joined by His Excellency, the Ambassador of the State of Palestine. Your Excellency, you're welcome. The Excellency's presence here is not by accident. Comrade Pessey was a keen member of the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, and he believed firmly in the freedom of the Palestinian people and worked for it. Your Excellency, you're most welcome. Comrade Tritrie Upoku, the convener of our movement, was to be here this evening to welcome all of you. Unfortunately, he's been caught up in some official business and is struggling to get here. As a matter of fact, we've had to wait for him for 30 minutes, and he has instructed me to do his duty. Friends, family, comrades, we are organizing this very simple ceremony in salute of a fallen comrade, and we are exceedingly happy. In a sad moment, but happy that all of you, family, friends, and comrades, have turned up to do honor to this very great son of Ghana and a leading member of our movement. We'd like to thank you all very sincerely for coming, and want to hope that this very simple ceremony will contribute to understanding who he was and what he has done for mankind, for his country, and for all of us. We are all very welcome. As I just finished doing his job, he arrived. So Comrade Poku has arrived. At this stage, we would like to invite Comrade Victoria Wilson of the Winneba Collective of our movement to give us a poem. Comrade Victoria Wilson.
A great oak has fallen with a mighty thud that shook the very foundations of our world. It appeared like a rushing wind, crushing and sweeping us off our feet like an earthquake. The anguish is like that of a two-edged sword pierced through the hearts of families, friends, and comrades. But we shed tears, not of sorrow, but of gratitude. A committed militant we had, who even until his last breath did not relent to moving the struggle forward. Your legacy surely lives on. Our conviction therefore remains. Revolutionaries, as individuals, may pass away, but their ideas still remain. It is in these words that we take solace. Red salute, comrade. Rest in power. Thank you.
In addition to deputizing for our convener, I've also been instructed by the movement to give a tribute in memory of our departed comrade. Ladies and gentlemen, Comrade David Pessey was a very extraordinary human being. He would not fit into many of the categories that we know. Throughout my political life, I've never encountered anybody like him. There's a guy who wakes up in the morning and is preparing for a meeting. And he makes up his mind what the outcome of the meeting should be. And he gets into the meeting, and the meeting lasts for 3 hours. And he goes back home with the same position, no change. I mean, Pessey's fidelity to principle and so on was so strong that sometimes he just simply appeared as unbending. But in a movement such as ours, he was such an important pillar because he tested us all the time. Anytime we had to take a decision, you had to think about what Pessey's take would be. And Pessey was very, very strict, ideologically and politically. He was also such a very disciplined person and a perfectionist. Pessey's perfectionism showed in many ways, but there was one particular way in which it showed all the time. A meeting decides that a statement has to be written and that the draft should be done by Pessey. And it's normal for Pessey to do 10 drafts and still not be able to meet the deadline. He writes the first draft, he reads it, and he tears it up because it doesn't meet his standards. Then he writes a second draft, he tears it up because it doesn't meet his standards, and so on. He was so harsh on himself, and he strove for perfection all the time. There's another aspect of Pessey's life which is striking. One day, after a late evening meeting, I was driving Pessey to his house in Adenta. And halfway, he asked, "Comrade, don't you need any money?" I said, "Pessey, why?" I said, "Well, I just got paid." Pessey would share everything that he has. Pessey did not cling on to things like money and food and so on. He was always ready to share. I knew that Pessey had very rough times. But even in his rough times, Pessey was willing to share the little money he had earned from civic response, from doing some work from civic response. He said, "I made so much money. How much do you need out of the money that I made?" I said, "Pessey, you need the money." He said, "But if you need it, I can give you some of the money," and so on. And that was Pessey. Very kind, extremely kind, and Pessey did many other things. Pessey could not be influenced by the things that influence normal politicians and so on. He didn't care about all the trappings of office and so on that people crave for these days. He always wanted to lead his very, very simple life and to make a contribution to the struggles of the peoples of the world to build a better place. And it was for this reason that he was a very, very active member of the Palestine Solidarity Campaign. He also was active in the Cuban Solidarity Campaign and was particularly active in the campaign of the people of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic for independence, to free themselves from the yoke of colonial occupation and so on. We would remember Pessey as a member of the National Reform Party, which came up, I think, in the year 2000 and so. And his colleagues here may say things about the role that Pessey played in the National Reform Party as an ideological guide, as a field worker, and as a technocrat. Pessey, as you do know, held a PhD. He had a doctorate degree. But it meant very little to him. Very, very little to him. It didn't mean anything to him at all. As a matter of fact, he spent a lot of his time criticizing his colleagues who had advanced in academia and so on. And one day, we were having a conversation, and somebody made a remark about a gentleman who had a PhD. And the insinuation was that the guy had a PhD and therefore knew what he was talking about. And Pessey's response was very simple. He said, look, until I went to the university, I didn't know that you could find extraordinary stupid people as professors and PhD holders and so on. Now that was Pessey. What did the PhD mean to him? Yes, you could have a PhD. He believed in the value of education and so on, but he thought that these educational titles would make more sense and have more value if they are utilized in the service of the people, if they are utilized in the building of that new world in which hunger is banished, that new world in which war is banished, that new world in which the exploitation of man by man and the domination of man by man is eradicated. This evening, we shall play Dr. Pessey's own words. We have a very short video, about 14 minutes, and Pessey will speak for himself. Family, friends, and dear comrades, this is our tribute to our comrade, our brother, and our father, Dr. David Pessey. At this stage, we'd like to invite Comrade Oswald Okainte to give us another dirge. Comrade Oswald Okainte to give us another dirge. And thereafter, we would like to invite a member of the family also to say a few words about Dr. David Pessey.
Kafawoe wanya ni woba, afawoe wanya ni woba. Chukwa kala moko moko nitaku akacha moko moko. Afawoe wanya ni woba. Chukwa kala moko moko nitaku akacha moko moko. Afawoe wanya ni woba. Kaya afawoe wanya ni woba. Anyamime. Afawoe wanya ni woba. Chukwa kala moko moko nitaku akacha moko moko. Afawoe wanya ni woba. There is a journey we all must endeavor to embark on. A journey for a cause so wide as the breadth of the wild across a metaphor of the wilderness, little strength, there's so much expected to be achieved. Across to make life livable for all. This journey as wide as the breadth of the world, woven with the fibers of treachery and flabbergast. Yet, like Comrade Pessey, we must not find ourselves in the arms of laziness nor fears. We must try to find the soles of our feet on the keyboards of Kilimanjaro, so that if the night comes and the sun refuses to rise tomorrow, like Dr. Pessey, our sweat, our strength shall be counted among the many sweats. That yes, we chose to use our intellect sphere to set a journey along the banks of the deep rivers, hope to reach the land of realities, across the hurricanes, the thunderstorms, and yet never found ourselves in despair. Comrades, there is a journey we have chosen to embark on. Not yet there. Comrade, fall to find ourselves in the graveyard of valiance, yet to remind us that it will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we must get there. Heaven knows how we will get there. We know we will. Waya, eh, waya, 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 eh. Waya, eh, waya, eh, waya, ya. Vamijo, waya, oh, bani waya, waya, ya. Manayenko, waya, waya, eh, waya, eh, waya, ya. Waya, eh, waya, ya. Viva SMG, viva! Viva! Comrade Pessey, viva! Comrade, viva! Adieu.
At this stage, we'd like to invite the brother of Comrade Pessey to introduce members of the family here present and to invite one from the family to say a few words about Dr. David Pessey.
Thanks so much. My name is Emmanuel Pessey. Maybe he's David Eccles. I'm Emmanuel Michael. And it looks to me that we have a whole lot of family people here. Right here is Nana Akutu. That's my cousin. Akwamu Edum Hini. And I don't know, maybe you can. This is the daughter. Nadu Pessey, Lenina Nadu Pessey. And that's the in-law, Nancy. I don't know whether maybe you can. I'll love for you maybe to just stand so that that'll be okay. Or you don't want to. Fine. That's a sibling. In fact, that's a if I know of introduction of my and that's the very last sibling. That's Sammy. And then I can see a whole lot of old school mates here, my seniors and things. And then behind there, Michael, that's my son. That's another in-law. This is my aunt, like my senior cousin, seriously, Matilda. That's the wife of one of the siblings. That's Theodora. Here we have Tina, that's a cousin. And all these three are first cousins too. This is Andrew, this is Dora, this is Evelyn. That's another cousin, Sammy. That's a sibling. That's Gabriel. And that's a nephew. That's new too. For the family people, I think I'm that's Millicent, a cousin. I think we've had enough. I want to just at this point, I need to maybe I'll just have to move on and say a few things. I don't know about my brother. I mean, in terms of tribute, because it's not easy for me. My brother, Dr. David Eccles Pessey, happens to be the very first son of the family. And I don't know, but I've been rather too close with him. I mean, in virtual everything, in his travels, whether he was moving across the country, because of his work sometimes, I mean, what do you call it? But I'll just try to summarize, try and be as brief as I can. As far as I know, among all of us as siblings, he's the smartest. That one for sure. I can vouch on that he's been the smartest. And just because of that smartness, our dear father of blessed memory, James Emmanuel Pessey, he just liked him because he realized he was just too smart. And one of the things that our dear father wanted to push him to do, I'll say push him to do, because he actually wanted to be a doctor, right? That's a medical doctor. Yes, he got to start as a medical doctor, but at the point he had to veer off because he realized that his what do you call us? Yes, in Greek and all those kind of things. So he veered there, took his masters and all those things, and then and doctorate and all those things in UK. But the one thing that I want to mention about who is to us is that our daddy died rather very young, at the age of 52. At that time was 23 or 24, just started his national service at Furi at Afram Plains. So he immediately had to be a father, even though he had not. At the age of 23, I was 17. I just entered Form 4 in France. So he left. He was there, I think, doing his national service. Within 2-3 months, our dad was dead. So he had to come back. Make sure he was buried and everything. And then he left off to go and finish his national service. Came back. And then, within a very short time, he had a scholarship, went out and went and did all he had to do, his masters and all the doctorate and things. But what I can say is that in all these things, excellent things that he did, he tried very much to be as low as, I don't know what, but he tried very much to be as low and as humble as, you may not smell anything about doctorate and things about him, but he was constantly learning, constantly researching. I see him as a working library. Every time he's noting and writing something. And I think that one of the things that educated to us as siblings is the need to really learn to perfection. So that is what our dear and venerable Pessey Pratt, Comrade Pessey Pratt, was saying. It's also true. Yes, everything he said was what he tried to perfect every principle of his. And that's where he lived. To the point that I would say that he died virtually working, in spite of what we know him to be. I mean, he was working, just working, learning, working, applying, and trying to be very humble. Sometimes I look at him and I realize that I mention things about. I mean, of course, I'm Christian. That's what I do. I'm Christian, right? And I happen to be a chorister. Fine, but you may not really get him. Yeah, you may not really get him professing to be anything religious. You get me? But sometimes it was so Christ-like. So I come out of myself and say, how can? I mean, he doesn't profess to be of any religion in any way, but his actions go beyond anybody you think to a standard Christian. So I realized that no, probably we just have to always revere him. That's why the fact that we were siblings. I saw that he was in a much higher class and everything. And so basically I made him my mentor. I mean, his principles and things that I had just got me to get so close to him. And the truth was that you had our dear brother, Honorable Pessey say that all the things he said about him was just on what do you call it, on point. There's nothing about him that. So I really was lost somehow for words to see what I have to say, because it looked like I'm just saying just what you should say. So I think because of time and everything, I didn't ask how much time you wanted to give me, but I think I was told I'm telling myself. So I'll also take opportunity and thank everybody here. This is a wonderful memorial for him, for us as a family, and for all friends and loved ones here. I'm so grateful, and I pray that God blesses the thought and everything that I did. I believe so much that if it's about sleeping and resting well, just this event will make you rest and sleep so well. God bless you. A lucha continua.
We will have to alter our program just a little bit because His Excellency the Ambassador of Palestine has to go, and he wants to make a short statement before he goes. So His Excellency the Ambassador of the State of Palestine.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. All my sympathy with the family and the friends. Not only me, the Palestinian community in Ghana, and all the Palestinian people in Gaza and in the West Bank. Because most of the Palestinian people know Dr. David. When they saw him in the TV, how he defends about the Palestinian people and talk about Palestine, and he asks all the time for free Palestine. One day I remember when I arrived to Ghana before 10 years, I met him after 1 month, and we start to talk together how we can work in Ghana about the Palestinians issue. Then I met him a lot of times in my residence on dinner or in Kusebrat, Honorable Kusebrat office, or in the Freedom Center here. And I saw him on the TV all the time he talk about Palestine and condemn the Israeli occupation to the Palestinians' land. I remember one day the Israelis killed 173 from my people. Most of them was children and women in the border of Gaza. And I saw him in the evening. He said to me, "My brother, listen to me. I cannot forget it. My brother, listen to me. There is no occupation in our world continue to the end of our life. Ghana occupied one day. India occupied one day. Most of the Arab countries occupied one day. But now, all these countries free. The only country occupied this time, only Palestine. But believe me, and I am sure it will be free soon. And when I read the program for this, when I read the program, I am sure that the organizer don't know that maybe I will come. But because I'm a human and I am honest to him, I should come and talk about him. My brother and sisters, all my sympathy with you. Dr. David all the time defends about the freedom, the international law, the justice, and the human rights. And I want to tell his daughter here, I saw her cry, don't worry about him. He's in a place better than our place. And God will bless him, and bless you, and bless all the family, and bless Ghana. Thank you so much.
Well, at this stage, we would allow Dr. Pessey to speak for himself. And we're going to show a very, very short video of Dr. Pessey speaking for himself.
The anniversary of Sajifo. And recognize the criminal overthrow that has set us back centuries. When people speak about Nkrumah, they speak about the many institutions that he set up, the physical infrastructure that he built, but the most important aspect of Nkrumah was one, his belief, his faith in the capacity of ordinary people. And that he understood that if we had self-belief, there was nothing we could not do as a people. Anything others have done, we can do and can surpass. Now, since it's overthrow, everything has been done to send us back to the slave house of colonialism, to destroy, to demolish our self-belief, our self-confidence. So today it is common that if we have a problem that we have to discuss, you find in our midst foreigners who have no place because their interests are different from ours. But some of them have a permanent interest. But most of them, what we now call development partners, have a permanent interest in our backwardness, in demonstrating the falsehood of what Nkrumah stated, that the African is capable of managing his affairs. A lot of money, time, effort is devoted to proving that right. And until we get a grasp of that, we are not going anywhere fast. So, Akosombo, Jamahabo, the hundreds of factories he built, all of those are important. But the most important is that we believe in ourselves, We own and set our agenda. Now, on the small matter of the MPP's attempt to steal the 2024 elections, it's always important to be guided by history. In opposition, under whatever pretext, real or imaginary, when the MPP had issues about the operations of the Electoral Commission and about the voters register in particular, because the voters register is at the heart of any proper election. The matter will be gone into initially against the opposition of the party in power, the NEC, but then a consensus will be reached, and then we'll move on. So you can do a narration of our journey from opaque ballot boxes to photo IDs that moved to color and then moved back to black and white under MPP. And I raise this point in order to point to another historical fact, that whenever the MPP has been in power, it has sought to close the democratic space. So I'm sure you remember the famous pronouncement of J.H. Mensah, flash with victory. I believe it was in, was it 2001? Yes, maybe. But when he said that by the time they had finished, the NDC will cease to exist, or worse to that effect. And that is tied to this other point I made about Nkrumah, his belief in the people, and the criminal stupid enterprise that has been going on for the past 8 years, to erase him from our history and rewrite and introduce other criminals as our heroes in his place. Now, the fundamental difference between Nkrumah and those who invited him was his belief in the people. Now, every attempt to rewrite history is not only a criminal enterprise, but also part of another crime. So people are trying to prepare space and the context for more crimes against the people, because the MPP never believed that ordinary people like the Atia the watchman or Ali the cow, what is it? The headsman has a right when Adishie are deciding on matters of what this should be done. They've never believed it. That was the principal point of departure between Nkrumah and the people who invited him. They had a very small, narrow project for the educated elite, the so-called Bintu. And what were they fighting for? They were fighting to be placed on the same level with the white man in the Gold Coast. There was no place in their project for the Mama Buloy or the Ntamfrafo. There was no place for the vast majority of their kinsmen, miners, farmers, fishers. No, that wasn't a project they were building. So when Nkrumah came in and and brought in the people, he had destroyed their project. But they had lost control of it, which is the reason why our president and his ilk cannot forgive Nkrumah. And Abuja, they passed a law that made it illegal to hold an effigy of Nkrumah. To publicly celebrate him or refer to him. But that law, I think, went out with Kutu Achampong. Now they cannot do so legally. So they have to use other means. But that is also part of just building the background to what I'm about to say. So it's the hatred and contempt for the ordinary people, which is what drives a lot of what the NPP does. They don't believe that it is a business of ordinary people to determine our destiny. Simple. Okay? And under Kufuor, they had this tack of trying to take over the functions of the Electoral Commission. You know, the attempt to take over procurement, which was resisted and defeated. Then they floated on some speculation, allegation, was it? That the Electoral Commission chair had engaged himself in some foreign exchange transaction that was illegal. They floated it and they kept nursing it, but they didn't proceed with it. But that went hand in hand with preparations for the theft of the 2004 elections. I remember very clearly statements by Dan Boche about how they were going to win an overwhelming second term. Even then, there were pointers to the possibility that President Kufuor might only last one term. But such was, I mean, even coming up to the second anniversary of his coming into power, it was key that his regime went beyond 2 years. Buzi had been taken out after 2 years. It was key. So they came up to the 4 years. It was important that they get a second term. And preparations went into it. Now, I've heard people quote various statements by either Afarijan or presidents or chairs from the past. The most famous and this thing is that elections are won at the bullets. That is nonsense. Elections can be won or stolen at every point. Before the polling, right up through the transmission, to the simple tallying. Now, I heard people say that, for instance, the NDC went to the Supreme Court without their results. What the NDC went to court to do was simply to get the Honorable Chairperson of the Electoral Commission to demonstrate how she came by the varying results. Simplicity. But they didn't reckon with the accomplices on the court. So the theft was consummated. But in 2020, the key point to note about all of these matters is that starting from the appointment of Jean Mensah as EC chairperson. The Electoral Commission was converted into an extension of the NPP and its agency. I see that many of the public commentators, including my friends in the NDC, are laboring under a misimpression that they are dealing with an quote-unquote independent constitutional body. When what they are dealing with is the NPP. That's the only way you can make logic sense out of the foolish statement that they are supposed to have made, that but they will go on a demonstration. They are threatening with a demonstration. Yes, of course. That is the only way you can square this. That the NPP is the Electoral Commission. Party headquarters, Jubilee House, the president, and a few key people in the shadows. I won't mention their names for now. Thank you very much. I think that I have to acknowledge today the anniversary of
That was Comrade David Pessey speaking for himself. I mean, this video clearly paints a very true picture of our comrade, friend, brother, and father. At this stage, we would like to make the microphone available to any and everybody here who has a word or two to say about Comrade David Pessey. The microphone is available.
Hello, Ming and your family. My way, brofo. When I my way, I show me Nanotu Akoto the third. Akwemu Manche, a doom hine. A doom hine, bravo affair, and she no genke affair, no ame. Tanya say, Nukwane, you were like about from each. No me abrochi. Tan ma abrochi mi te prempe ne inyemi no te mfasepem. No during holidays ya ameje ya labone popano. First que je otwen. She ben ahun ni me nchebe kete abrochi first. She ye ma ahun ni mi trashy. I'm fait cleaning hotel, I'm cassé les lébi, achat platé à me, que lébi est granté à tuner. Si no, ye menone, in a message, hey, I said I was speaking English. Sorry. I had a message that Dr. Nilate was coming to UK. Actually, he missed my address. So he met a friend of mine on a plane. At that time, that person wasn't even a friend, but he lived in the area when he mentioned. So he took Nilate to his house, where he spent about 4 days before we connected. And then he told me he had come to do an MPhil or a master's at Y College, University of London. At that time, I was doing international relations at University of London as well. So he stayed in my house on Caledonian Road, and I would go to him at Y College. But all that I want to add is that Nilati was fun. It's not always politics. Men, we liked women. That's all I want to add, for you to know that it's not always a sunken hero. We went through Brofo, Modim, Yalata, Ghana. If you ever watch it, no, me, Tony. I just want you to understand that he wasn't all that all work and no play. We actually had play, and we were players. Oh, we were players, but and we came together. And then, whilst we were in London, he wrote to Colonel Kutua Champong to complain about the Kalabule that was going on. So one day I went to Y College to go and visit him. I went to Y College to go and visit him, and then he says, "Come, let me show you something." Kutu had actually replied to him. And he had the letter, he showed me. At that time, I wasn't very politically interested, even though eventually I did Russian politics at the Essex University. So I said, but what? He says, hey, don't you know what is going on? I wrote to Kutu and told him to stop it because the poor people are suffering. Why? Charlie, you said, let's go after women and stop what you're saying. We are in London, Kutu, and later on, then when I came to Ghana, after he had returned, I realized that things were very, very serious because we had an auntie who was working for sir, your brother, Guzizano, when they had a party called Maggie, but Maggie was trading at Kalabule Lane. And I went to Kalabule Lane and I realized that Nilati was right after all. He was right after all. And Ohininsu, but the tears that are coming from my eyes is natural. So please, don't take it as if I'm crying. He knocked me. I was shocked. I was so shocked when I heard it. And the thing actually happened in my grandmother's house. And I had taken him there. He was a family, so therefore I take him there. And that's what actually drowns me. It drowns me. Thank you, sir. Thank you. But we went after women, but
I was studying somewhere at the back, and a very senior former member of government who was close to me said, "Oh, how can anybody say that Nilante liked women when we are there?" Well, so some people actually beat him. But the point must be made that in spite of his early days, Nilante was exceptionally devoted to his family and wife. I mean, he was so devoted to his family and wife, it was unbelievable. So his early days might be quite misleading. Because by the time that I got to know Nilante, he would run out of conversations and periods of enjoyment and so on because he had to get to his wife and so on. So this is just by way of emphasizing the other side of Nilante, beyond his being It's okay. The microphone is still available, and Comrade Bazini Tano would like to take the microphone.
Thank you very much. Once again, condolences to the family. I think that all of us valued Nilate highly. Whatever has been said about his different sides, all they do is to confirm the fact that this person loved life, and it is precisely because of the love of his life, because of his love of life, that the commitments that all of us celebrate about him were increasingly dominant in his life, and he increasingly committed himself to. From the tributes that his brother, for example, gave, and from our own personal experience of the man, I think we all know that he could have been anything he wanted to be in life. If it was simply a matter of career and getting on and doing well for yourself at the cost of any principles or without any principles, he would have been at the highest echelons of any career path he chose, be it in government, be it in the academy, and so on and so forth. So the fact that despite all these options, he knowingly and intelligently chose the path that he did, despite the hardship that brought, I think in itself is tribute to everything that we've heard here today. I myself, I met Nilate when I was a boy, maybe 12, 13. He was my eldest brother's friend and comrade. And over the years, in my teen years, when he lived on campus, when he lived on the university farms, every time you went there, there was a whole crowd of people of different walks of life, workers in the agri department, workers on the farm, and so on and so forth. Everybody treated as equals. They came in there, it was their home, it was their hub, it was their meeting place, it was the place in which ideas were exchanged, plans were made to intervene, to improve workers' lives, farmers' lives, and so on and so forth. And I learned a lot just being around him in that milieu all those years. He deeply respected people, which is why he insisted and practiced equality for all in and around him and whatever else that he did. He didn't say, I'm a PhD person, and so a university worker is lesser than me and I'll treat him better. None of that. And I think that's one of the things that we ought to take from his life, which is to say that ordinary people are as much capable of emancipating themselves as anybody else. And all of us with our different advantages or different disadvantages, our job in each instance is to find ways in which we can bring our talents and strengths together, we can bring our knowledge together to put to the service of precisely that, those various projects of self-emancipation that he represented so well. I remember Nilate as an activist of the defense committees, for example, People's Defense Committees, Workers' Defense Committees. He was instrumental in trying to wrest domestic control over internal trade and external trade through the people's shops, so on and so forth. All the things, the expertise that he had in terms of agric and so on, all of these had practical bearing on all the work that he tried to do in those areas. Very recently, I was trying to get him to find a lot of his old documents and a lot of all the references that he had in terms of the work, the design that they tried to have in terms of linking farmers to communities and cooperatives that controlled trading and so on and so forth, because those are precisely the kind of initiatives that we need today. People talk, for example, about 24-hour economy. Well, one of the things that the 24-hour economy can and ought to do is that it must become a vehicle for guaranteeing incomes for farmers, minimum standards for women, so on and so forth. And I think some of the pioneering work that people like Pessey have done ought to be brought to life today, renewed, adapted, expanded, and so on. And those things will be the real tribute to him. But even before we get to the level of government, for those of us who are not in government, is the kinds of things that we can borrow from him and apply in our day-to-day dealings with people, in our day-to-day fights to improve whatever little corner that we're in, and in the day-to-day conversations that we can have among ourselves in terms of the way we uplift each other, support each other, ensure that the best in each other always comes to the fore, and that we know that when we do that, we're not doing that in isolation, we're not doing that alone, we're not doing that without strength, because we have the strength of memory and experience of people like Nilate, and more than that, we have that strength living in all of us, which we can take forward. So that's really what I want to say. Once again, to the family, to all his comrades, which includes myself, and to all the aspirations that we have, this was a man who I think earned our respect, He taught us many things. He was happy to learn from all of us to the degree that we had something to offer, and that's precisely what we should take forward. Thank you very much.
Cadres of the Revolution from Tema would like to read a statement. Cadres of the Revolution from Tema. I'm just wondering which of the revolutions.
Revolution has a long way to go, but has come to stay. Cadence may go, cadence may come, but revolution has come to stay. Revolution has a long way to go, but has come to stay. We have known Neil and Tape for during the revolutionary time, and he has been coming to a meeting at Tema, and that time we were with NDM, and so the group is still alive. So we are having some small thing to share with you. That is tribute from Tema NDM network. Rest well, Comrade Pessey. We extend our sincere condolences to the family, comrades of the Socialist Forum and close pals of the man who was a long life student of history and politics, and never mixed an opportunity to share his brutally honest insights with our listeners. Comrade Pessey passing leaves a gaping hole, but his memory will continue to inspire and guide us as we move forward. We take comfort in the knowledge that his soul has found eternal peace and comfort, and that's the legacy of his life through the countless people he inspired. As we say goodbye to these giants, we are reminded of his importance of carrying on his work and continuing to fight for a world that is more just, equitable, and peaceful. Rest in perfect peace, Comrade Pessey. Thank you very much.
Would like to give the microphone to Ambassador Hodari Okai. You first. Okay. Commander Asasijima is here, and he wants to take the microphone first. Yes. And Commander Asasijima served in various capacities. I think the last capacity in which he served was Ambassador to Burkina Faso. Commander Asasijima.
I'm here so you change your ways. Right. Well, today is a sad day. A very sad day indeed, because when I entered the university in 1972, that is University of Ghana, I was in the Premier Hall, Legon Hall. There was this young man who always came to me. And I said, hey, my friend, the University of Ghana is for adults. And he said, but so what do you think I am? So no, you are not an adult. You are a small boy. Anyway, we became friends of friends. As I ran the cross country, he always be around to cheer me up. And from Legon, he pursued further studies. And before I realized he had come back, and he was a doctor. And he was at Legon Farms, because I thought he was at the Agric faculty. And from 82, 83, 84, I spent much more time also in Legon Farm, where he was. we were exchanging ideas. I mean, we had become brothers. We are no more friends, we are brothers of the country and of the revolution. I mean, Dr. Pessey, unlike most of politicians that we see in this country, where greed, avarice, and all kinds of things go with the politics in Ghana, you could not fault him. If he had 3 shares, maybe he used the shares. He was not envious. I mean, so when it appeared that he got into some slight problem in the initial stages of the revolution, I said, my friend, you people, you do not know Dr. Pessey. Maybe you have got the wrong information about him. I mean, so I went to the place and said, look, my friend, let's go home. And I took him home. Well, we became so close that even though I was a senior member of government at that time, and also where we came from, we have always believed in the people of Ghana. We have believed in the struggle that has to emancipate the poor people amongst us. So I took to some part-time farming at Abokobi, where this gentleman in cloth, you know, I knew him so well. And we were farming, and I was farming. Our times leave the castle maybe around 11 p.m. and I will have to go and see my farm, because maybe at that time I knew about three pigs were having piglets, and nobody will be there at that time, so I will be there. Dr. Pessey had become so close to me that at some point, my poultry farm, I had about 14,000, 15,000 bears. That was part-time farming. And pigs, I had over 500 at the time. I had pineapple, I had this, I had that. But you can guess what? It's Dr. Pessey who was at the center of it. Like even the feed for the pigs. Because there were many and I couldn't buy, you know, he developed a feeding program with cassava as base. And when we started, people were laughing at us. By the time my farm was getting too big, people were now intruding to find out what could have happened. What did I use to feed the animals? As of now, if you go to piggery farms, you will find out that cassava may be the main source of feed. And thanks to Dr. Pessey. You see, we were very close, and I knew him from Legon, like I said, till today that I'm talking about him. And if Joyce is here, please just be comforted, because your husband was never a womanizer. He was never a womanizer. No, sorry, don't worry about that. No, because I knew him in Legon. I knew him in Legon. And I knew him in lifetime when he was a lecturer. And I need him, I mean, up to today. So if we say we are no womanizers, please, then don't count Dr. Pessey at all, because he doesn't come into it. So it's so sad that very good people like Dr. Pessey, maybe today, if you go back to see what he's leaving behind, you may not find a big house, you may not find anything. But this was a man, his knowledge, his brains, his intellect. If he were to have 2 million houses, I wouldn't have been surprised. I would not have been surprised, because he was life. He could give you advice, he could discuss with you, you can descend to your level, and even if you are as mighty as the tallest hill, he could also be there with you. And such a person, I mean, if he has no properties in life, by his grace, wherever he is, he will be remembered always And what he's leaving behind is worth much more than all these acquisitions that people struggle for, and they leave this country behind all the time. So my condolences to myself also, and to the family, and to everybody who has found time to come. I thank you very much.
Ambassador Hodari Okai.
Thank you, sir. I thought this was a socialist forum where there will be fairness. And that whoever raised his hand first to talk would be allowed to talk. But I can understand. There are people and there are people. And so, Commander, my respect. You see, we those who have professed that we want to be part of the socialist world have teachers or forebears. And one of the very important forebears we have is Comrade Ernesto Che Guevara from Argentina, who died in Bolivia. And in one of his dictums, he had this to say. He said, wherever death may surprise us, let it be welcome. And he said further that if only one receptive ear, even one receptive ear has listened to us. And he has said further that, and even if one extra arm stretches out to take up our arms. Today, Comrade Pessey is not here. But the question is, has there been any receptive ear? I think yes, that's why we are here. Have there been any arms that have stretched out to take up the arms that they were holding? Yes, that we are here. So we are very, very sorry, but we are very happy at the same time that we are here. Different people who have spoken here have brought my attention to the fact that people who have known Comrade Pessey for various reasons, they are not the same. The reasons are different. And for those who have tried to provoke his wife, I think she is not paying any attention. So, Madam, I'm with you. Then, the wife is your wife. Okay. Then I will not be a part of it. I won't understand. Now, people have said how they knew Comrade Pessey, but I'm also going to say mine, which is not like their own. It's different. You see, we went to Comrade Kwesi Pratt's house for an end-of-year party that occurred very often in those days before what they named the disease that came and people stopped sleeping. COVID. Before the COVID, every end of year we went to his house for end-of-year party. It was there that I knew Comrade Pessey's wife for the first time. But he himself I had known. And I remember on one of the occasions I was returning from Comrade Kwesi Pratt's house, my battery stopped while the car was still moving. So the car also had to stop. And I got stranded. That was at the police, what's the name of that police station on the way from Atomic Police Station? It was in that neighborhood. So I stopped and I was trying to see if anybody from the party will identify me and help me. Many cars passed. I raised my hand. Nobody was looking at me. Then finally, I heard Comrade. Then it was this same Pessey we are talking about today, he came and stood by me till I called an electrician from Asylum down, and he came before we both left. That is an aspect of him that I also knew. It was not in the farm. It was not in chiefdom, but he showed me a kind of kindness that was incredible. And as I sat down listening to those who were speaking, I saw that everybody almost that has spoken about Comrade Pessey, I haven't looked at you. Everybody that has spoken about him, or anybody who has been associated with this meeting, has something to do with people. People. And I mean people. Comrade Pessey was a people-based man. He was not a property-owning Democrat. In other words, if I listen very carefully to my boss, Commander Sasijima, he wants to say that in terms of buildings and of property, we would say Pessey didn't prosper, isn't it? But today that's not the measuring rule. The measuring rule is that there must be people-based person, and he is one. I thank you, all of us who have come to share this last memory of his before the funeral comes on. I want to end by quoting an English writer whose name I will not be able to remember. He said, "Fame is not the shout of the multitude, but the spirit of a man that survives him, undying and unperishable." Fame is not the shout of the multitude, but the spirit of a man that survives him, undying and unperishable. I thank you all for coming to share the memory.
Ambassador Johnny Kwadwo. Today the ambassadors have seized the microphone. Ambassador Johnny Kwadwo.
Dear comrades and friends, I would like very, very much to express also my condolences, especially to the family and to all the comrades assembled here. There is only one thing that I think I would like to say on the occasion of the remembrance of Dr. Pessey. You see, in this Ghana country of ours, there are hundreds and thousands of so-called intellectuals, people who have learned book, and they think they have understood the book. Dr. Pessey was the one person who has been able to bring his intellect and what he actually knows onto the practical life of the everyday people. And that is an issue that separates him from the vast majority of so-called Ghanaian intellectuals. And it is a very, very rare, very, very, very rare phenomenon in this country. Kwame Nkrumah was one of the first of those people who learned book and was able to translate learning into what is useful for his daily life of ordinary people. And in Kwame Nkrumah's time, there are a whole lot of other people who were also intellectuals, but they were never able to bring what they have learned onto the practical life of daily activities of people. So in these days, you can see Dr. Pessey on Pan-African TV in the morning. You can see a whole lot of other Dr. this, Dr. that, Dr. so and so on Joy FM, on this and that and that and that. But the difference was always very, very, very clear. And for me, that is something that we need to hold on to very, very seriously. Because if our problems in this country are ever going to be solved, we need people who will apply their knowledge to the practical solution of everyday issues. In 1982, when we started this business of the People's Defense Committees, one of the first people I came across was Dr. Pessey. There was never an issue that Dr. Pessey did not know something about. In my later activities at national security, there was not a single national security question that you can discuss with Dr. Pessey without seeing how deeply knowledgeable he was about it. There was nothing. And you don't talk about agriculture, that one, leave it alone. You know? So to have one human being who was so completely rounded, who understood the nature of neo-colonialism, not only in general terms, but how it actually affects the day-to-day lives of ordinary people. It's a very rare phenomenon. And I would like to thank whoever brought Dr. Pessey to this world, whoever looked after him, whoever accompanied him in his life for giving us this gift. I'm just glad that I ever lived to see a human being like that. I thank you very much, and may his soul rest in eternal peace.
Comrade Al-Hassan.
My condolences to Dr. Pessey's family and to comrades here. Dr. Pessey is an inspirational fellow, but also very relatable human being, whether you are a socialist or non-socialist. And Pessey has a wide network which very few of us tapped into. I remember 3 months ago, I called Pessey and said, oh, your friend Jonathan passed away. I knew Pessey was in that well. But Pessey said, hang on, can you give me his daughter's number? I gave Jonathan's daughter, Sako's number to Pessey. Pessey called the family. Pessey found time and went to the house to pay his homage to Jonathan just across the street here. That's a few months ago. They were classmates in Infanspim or schoolmates, and they were together in Legon as well. That shows who Pessey is. And within that conversation, Pessey asked me, what are you doing? I said, oh, I'm studying. He said, where? I mentioned the school. I said, oh, do you know Professor Andrew Westby? I was like, what? Pessey, do you know this guy? He said, yeah, I know Andrew. We worked on cassava. I was like, what the heck is this? You see, and Andrew has been celebrated as a professor who knows everything about cassava, and here's Pessey here sitting with me sometime in Kokomilimli, had all this knowledge I didn't know. I didn't know this was Pessey's connection and his knowledge. What I will say is that we can talk all that we know about Pessey, but we'll do Pessey a big service if we put this, all that we know about him, into writing. And I challenge the socialist movement of Ghana to do that. Thank you.
I recognize Azuma Besori, one of the very, very long-standing friends of Dr. Pessey. But Azuma, we have no intention of sleeping here today.
Good evening, comrades and friends. In our custom, as we come to pay tribute to our late comrade, we should have been wailing, crying, not to be laughing about. We've lost a comrade who we will never see again until that kingdom comes. I know Dr. Pessey in Legon, where I worked. I worked with Dr. Pessey. I moved to work at the farms, but I was working at the main registry. So I went to the farms and they introduced Dr. Pessey to me. It was there I got to know him and then followed up to this place, Socialist Home, that we got to know each other. And not even that, he was instrumental in People's Defense Committees, which I was also involved very seriously. So Dr. Pessey was like a brother to me, because anytime I call him, say, Azuma, what's the problem? I say, oh, things are not doing well. He said, oh, don't worry, things will be good for us. So he kept on. And one thing I learned about him is that when you ask Dr. Pessey a question, he would like you to repeat for him to know what the question that you are asking him. Whether you are asking him a wrong question or a different question, he wants you to repeat. So I studied that from him very well. So anytime I want to ask him a question, I must be sure that I ask him the correct question so that I'll be able to answer. So we've lost a comrade indeed that we'll never see again. And like one of our comrades said, Mr. Larson, he's saying that we should write a book about Dr. Pessey. So as we are still standing here, I can see my great comrade Chichu Poku sitting here. We should all come together to write a book about our past comrades so that we'll put it in our archives. My good friend Kwesi is here. We don't know when we will die. We don't know when we will die. So if we don't start making a library for ourselves, one day nobody will be able to trace our history. And Uncle Comrade Kwesi had taken most of the documents from me to write a book. And he's not writing. He's not writing the book. I had pictures, plenty pictures of what we were doing those days. I can't trace them. Somebody was looking for a document. I said, I can't find it. He was annoyed with me. That person was annoyed with me. That why should I give all this thing out? I said, no. But I can't write. You people are intellectuals. So you should be able to do something. I can see Johnny Kodjo. Even though I was not as a university student, I worked with Johnny Kodjo in the early days of the revolution. And he knows me very, very well. So in this world that we are, you have to do good, to be good to each other, to each other. If not, you will see one day you see yourself in a position that you cannot be. The ant, let me repeat something. The female ant says that it is very small, but that doesn't mean that it will not show its private part to her husband. So even though we don't have the reason, but the little that we have, we should be able to respect each other and so that we grow forward. Thank you so much. And my condolences to the family, and may his soul rest in peace. Thank you so much.
Comrade Dauda has indicated that he wants to say something. If after him there's anybody else who has something to say, please can you show by hand? So Comrade Dauda will be the last person in this segment. Comrade Dauda.
Thank you. Good evening. I think let me start by saying I think 2 days ago, was it on the 4th of just 4th, 2 days ago, I think there was a anniversary of Dr. J.B. Dankwa. And in the course of marking the anniversary of Dr. J.B. Dankwa, I think followers of MPP repeated a claim that the NLM was a peaceful nationalist movement and that NLM was never a movement of tax. They also repeated a claim that the PDA, which was legitimately passed under the leadership of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, was unlawful and that it did not coincide with the will of the people. As they repeated this claim, in fact, I remember Dr. Pessey. And even as we were watching Dr. Pessey himself spoke for himself, you know, Dr. Pessey liked to call himself a student of history. Indeed, he was a historian. I remember Dr. Pessey because if Dr. Pessey were to be alive, I knew that he would have taken the fight today. He would have straightened the record and would have pointed to the NLM followers why the NLM has never been a peaceful nationalist movement. In fact, Dr. Pessey would have pointed out to them that the PDA was legitimate and it had the support of the people of this country. That is the tribute that we should be paying to Dr. David Pessey. Dr. Pessey, for us, for some of us, he was a father, he was a mentor, he was a leader, and he was a comrade. I had a very, 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 very close and deep interactions with Dr. Pessey. And I would like to share some few. I think some years ago, we meet here at the Freedom Center here, and we have a tradition of rotating discussions. I mean, this week, this comrade would lead this discussion, and then at meetings, sometimes the leadership will point some of the youth to chair the meeting. And before you come and lead a discussion, I in particular, I'll engage with Dr. Pessey. And Dr. Pessey is full of depth, very, very tolerant, and very, very engaging. Dr. Pessey will take you through how to present the discussion using the socialist or the leftist framework. In fact, we have lost a legend. But as we remember Dr. Pessey, I think it is also important for us to recall and to remember that the reality is that our leadership are gradually leaving us behind. The task for us is to create a new core of leadership. The leadership that was being argued by Dr. Pessey. A leadership and core of activists who are ready to study, ready to struggle, and ready to endure. In fact, Dr. Pessey had always told me that we should be able and ready to make our own mistakes and to provide our own solutions. As we mark the departure of Dr. David Pessey, for some of us, our father, our mentor, our leader, our comrade, we should always be guided by his words and deeds. May his soul rest in perfect peace.
Comrades and friends, I've listened to all the tributes, and it seems to me that something is missing. Dr. Pessey did not just love his friends, his human friends, and so on. Dr. Pessey also had another group of friends, and they were pigs. He would always find a way of rearing pigs. And he would insist on feeding the pigs himself, in spite of the fact that he always had people on the farm who he paid to take care of the pigs. Pessey would always try to feed the pigs himself. In fact, on that Saturday morning, when I heard that he had passed on, and he had passed on at Abokobi, it struck me that he passed on a visit to his pigs. Sometimes in very difficult moments and so on, I knew that one person he always turned to was our convener, Comrade Tritri Upoku. And he would call Comrade Tritri Upoku and tell him that the pigs have not eaten. The pigs needed to be fed and so on. And Comrade Upoku would do the needful and the pigs would be fed. But there was something very striking about Dr. Pessey that I would guess a lot of people would think is inappropriate to speak about. You can feed his pigs all the time. The pigs would mature. But please don't make the mistake of trying to buy one of the pigs. He will calculate the price in kilos. And he would not take a pesewa of the kilos that he had calculated. And the last time I tried to buy a pig from his farm, I reminded him that just 2 weeks ago I was feeding your pigs. Why are you charging like the market and so on? He said, Comrade, I'm not selling the pigs to you. I'm only asking you to contribute to the project. At this time, I would like to call on our convener, Comrade Tritri Upoku, who has known Dr. Pessey very closely, to make his final remarks. And then after, those of us who want to stay can stay for the refreshment. Comrade Tritri Upoku.
Thank you. Good evening. I do. Thank you all for coming. I think it's been an evening that reflects Neil Ate himself. He would have loved this gregarious gathering, people saying things, not always politically correct things, but things that reflected aspects of life that, hey, it's what it is. Pessey was my comrade before I knew what a comrade was. I met Neil Ate when I went to Form 1. He was in Upper 6th at the time. And he was a very different senior boy from what we were used to, what was common in the school at the time. This was somebody who was not only not bullying you, not only not treating you like crap, but was actually interested in what your ideas were, what you thought about different things, was interested in making sure that you were comfortable, you were happy. He cared about people. He genuinely cared about other people. He saw himself as part of a larger humanity, which was important to him. And I think all the rest of it comes from that. It's from that care that the instinct that leads us to political struggle, etc., is born. Like Che Guevara once said, at the risk of sounding ridiculous, let me say that the true socialist is moved by feelings of great love. That was Neil Ate. We've been told about just how brilliant he was. And yes, even in those days, in the Form 1 boy, we knew it. This was the senior boy who really wouldn't bother with classwork and so on, but knew all the information, had all the facts, understood the analysis better than everybody else, but was not interested in the rat race of getting into medical school, because in those days, medical school was, the end of the world. So you had all these, in those days, 6 formers wore blue shirts. So you had this whole tribe of people whose whole life was getting into medical school. And Pessey was just trying to understand the world and explain it to all of us. Nilate didn't give a toss about school rules and the school's priorities in terms of good Methodist students, singing hymns and wearing pressed white shirts and so on. No. Nilate saw that a lot of that was bullshit, hiding a reality of a group of kids who are being groomed to be the elite in an exploited society. Even at that stage, he understood that. And he communicated it to us. Of course, he left the year I was in Form 1, was his last year in the school. I got to know him again when I came to Legon with your mother, who was my classmate. And he was then running the agric station at the University Farms in Nungwa. And as Bazini has recounted, his home out of the farm was the center of our intellectual and social life for a wide range of people. Not just those of us who were on the left or gravitating towards the left, but people who were just interested in ideas. People who were interested in seeing Ghana and its possibilities in new ways. Pessey provided the sort of fulcrum around which all of that revolved. I worked with him in CDRs when he was in charge of people's shops. And I know it's difficult for many people today to understand exactly what that meant. But in '82, Ghana was in a crisis that in many ways was deeper than the one we have now. Now at least there are goods in the shops and so on, and people can do quack and find money and go and buy something. In those days, it just simply wasn't there. So there was a crisis about the sort of mafias that controlled supply, hoarding things to drive prices up and allowing them out. And this was pervasive throughout the state sector. There was this, was the Ghana Supply Company and so on, the managers of which just made a killing for controlling supplies of essential commodities. That's what we call them, essential commodities. And Nilate was part of a very small group of people who sat down, analyzed not just the foodstuffs distribution system, but also the Nsenko system, and tried to break these monopolies and create a rationing system that made sure that everybody got something, however small. We would share the pain of our situation and hopefully share the revival that was possible. Many, many, many things went wrong with the revolution. I mean, that's its own story. Okay. And one day it will be told in full. But Nilate's generosity, his dedication throughout that period, his insistence that none of us, because we were senior cadres, well, I wasn't the senior cadre, I was a kid in the system. Nobody gets special treatment. None of us are better than the people pushing trolleys in the markets and so on. We all eat the same food. We must all make the same sacrifices. That was Nilate. I worked with him after the revolution. Okay. He, contrary to what many people think, Nilate was never an NDC member in '92. There's this whole mythology about the people who left NDC to form Reform. Nilate was not an NDC member. His first political party was the Reform Party. And in the Reform Party, he was a pain in the ass. But he was a pain in the ass because he insisted on principle. He would not let people deviate, take the easy way out of a situation. He'd insist on taking the hard route, no matter what the cost was. And they make the point that, well, revolutions fail. But if you leave behind lessons that people can learn from and do it better the next time, it's so no shortcuts, no compromises. It may take 100 years, that's what it takes. But if you learn the lessons properly, you can shorten that. So reform came, reform went. I spent years with Neil Latte. In fact, it was Neil Latte who taught me what I know about peasant society in Ghana. We spent about 3 years working in northern Ghana. We spent months in the northern region understanding, or he teaching me understanding, but he teaching me how those systems historically evolved, how people feed themselves, who is exploiting them, the way in which government has become an accretion to systems of exploitation and so on. I learned all that from him. We spent nights roaming through villages, places where we didn't speak the language at all. I mean, for example, Nilate and I were in Yendi when the first assassination attempt on the Yana started. We were stuck in a hotel in Yendi. The only two people who did not understand the conversations going around, as people were busy plotting an assassination. You know, we were there sitting in this hotel. At that time, Vice President Aliu was trying to get us kicked out of the hotel so he could come and take all the rooms for his entourage. But there was a friend who has also passed on now, who wasn't Dagomba, but he understood the language. He came and said to us, Jack, what these boys are saying is that tomorrow we are killing Yana. This was the fire festival. So you guys get out of here. So 4 o'clock in the morning, we fled. Fortunately, it didn't happen. 3 weeks later, I again was with Pessey in Dallon when the assassination actually took place. And we saw, what was unique for me at least, was the mobilization of traditional warriors. Because the whole stretch, Kulungu, all the way down to Dallon, what's the place next to Kulungu? Anyway, not Kulungu, sorry. Anyway, I've forgotten the names. But warriors, people with spears, people with swords, people with shotguns, kafugbe, you know, lining up trucks to go to Yendi to go to war because Yana had been killed, or there was a rumor of Yana being killed. So Pessey and I went through all of this together. We did cassava business together and failed. We did cassava chips. Later on, we did cassava flour. We ran a plant in Adosu. And so we've done many, many things together. So I'm in a position to attest to a lot of the things that people have said here tonight about, first and foremost, his generosity. Nilate will give you the shirt off his back without thinking twice. About his honesty, about his inability to tell a lie or cut a corner to benefit himself. Nilate would face the truth and take the consequences. About the impossibility of silencing him, because Nilate will speak out against injustice. You cannot silence Nilate. And the clip we watched just showed him typical. And that's what I've known of him since 1971. Intellect, huge intellectual capacity, huge consumption of information, retention of information, analyzing that information, breaking it down so people like me at a lower level could begin to understand some of these concepts and begin to understand what all this meant for our society. Okay. Because that for me has been the path to socialism. And it is the example of people like Nilate that really, if we are committed to this struggle, we must begin to follow. He loved life. He was not, as our comrade says, he wasn't, some dour-faced intellectual ivory tower. He loved life. Okay. And he loved his family like crazy. There wasn't anything Nilate would not do for you guys. Life is hard. Life is not fair. But that's why we struggle. And we've lost a soldier today. We've lost a prophet today. But he's left lessons we can learn. Maybe Alas's suggestion of a book is the right thing to do. Because I don't think people understand, because he was so humble himself, I don't think a lot of people understand just what we have lost. Okay. So, once again, our deepest condolences as socialist movement. Our deepest condolences to you and to the family. This was a man of respect. This was a leader. Going forward, if there are things we can do to make the journey a little easier for you, within our means, we will be there. He's our comrade, and will always be our comrade. So thank you all very much for coming, and I wish you all safe journeys home. Thank you.
Well, we would like to hope that this would not be your last visit to the Freedom Center. The Freedom Center is open to all of us, and we do so many things in this Freedom Center. So on Monday evenings, if you are bored, please come to the Freedom Center. There's a live band here which plays every Monday evening. Yes. So Monday evenings from 5:30 up to about 9:30, reggae and high life music in this very hall, and we are all invited. And we organize a number of activities and so on. Let's join the Freedom Center in memory of our departed comrade, Nilate David Pessey. So you are all welcome to be part of the Freedom. Nilate. I always had that problem with him, so Nilate Pessey. Nilate. So at this stage, our convener has said everything. All I have to add is that we have a few drinks around, so you can stay around and enjoy our very, very light refreshment. Until we see you again, it's bye-bye from all of us at the Freedom Center.